Hi everybody, Dan Illman and Mike Beer. The DRF Saturday race of the day is the Grade 1 Cigar Mile Handicap. 1-turn mile at the Big A. $750,000 is the purse. Some familiar names as we take a look at this field. Maximum Security looking to put a capper on champion 3-year-old Honors. Winner of the Haskell. Of course, we know whether he finished first in the Kentucky Derby, was disqualified from that race. Really, other than the hiccup in the Pegasus, a race in which he just broke terribly, he's been the most consistent 3-year-old by leaps and bounds. It's not been a great crop, but he's been dependable.
I don't think his talent has really ever been in question. Maybe it was in question after he debuted for 16, but since then, his talent hasn't been in question. You know, things have not gone according to plan for him since the Kentucky Derby, but his talent remains intact. And he did come back off that layoff last time with what I thought was a pretty impressive win against older horses. We'll
throw up the Timeform U.S. pace projector for this race, and I think you and I are going to question this one a little bit. Yes, Maximum Security is very fast, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if he makes the lead. I don't know if he's going to have that much separation from the now horse, the much improved Spun to Run, who just showed the field his heels last time out in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. He has shown the ability to rate, and I guess drawing outside Maximum Security, it gives Irad some options that maybe he could sit second, but I can't imagine Irad just allowing Maximum Security to control this race.
We'll see how it all plays out. I look at it the same way you do. The more I looked at the race, the more I felt like the two favorites in here are sort of destined to hook up early in this race. I can't imagine that Irad just doesn't want to be aggressive with Spun to Run based on his last two races.
Let's start things off with the horse that would really benefit if the two big names in this race and the two shortest prices on the tote board hook up, and that's Whitmore. Whitmore, we all know, is a one-run sprinter. This is the first time he's going a route of ground since the 2016 Kentucky Derby.
Right.
He might be able to handle a 1-turn mile with some pace in front of him. Let's watch the Breeders' Cup Sprint. It was his second start off a spring layoff. He's on the far outside. This year's Breeders' Cup Sprint was just sensational from a class standpoint. Mitoli, Chancelot. The fact that Whitmore was able to hit the board for the second consecutive year in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, I think speaks volumes about this horse's class and will. He has worn bar shoes now in his 2 starts of the form cycle. It appears he'll wear them again in the Cigar Mile. Are you worried about the mile with him?
I mean, a little bit. I do think he's more of a sprinter, but as you say, he hasn't gone past sprint distances since the Derby. It's worth noting that leading into the Derby, he ran in all 3 prep races routing at Oaklawn Park as a 3-year-old. He hit the board in all of them. Even back then, it did feel like the book on him was he doesn't really want to go that far. He wants to go shorter, and so it's no surprise to see what he has done since they've turned him into a sprinter. A Grade 1 win last year, several graded stakes wins, hitting the board 2 years in a row in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. He's a sprinter. I think he can get the mile. If they hook up in front of him, I think he will run at the end. He's a very fair price on the morning line, so I'm not going to knock him. I don't love him at a mile, but I think he'll get it.
And if it's going to be a mile, it'll probably be a 1-turn mile, right, for Whitmore. He reminded me of that horse. Remember Ride On Curlin, who they always tried to stretch out? He was kind of a sprinter. At least Ron Moquette realized that and turned this horse into a really top-flight sprinter on his best day. We'll see if he gets the mile. He's an honest horse. Todd Pletcher has the 2 Bal Harbour, who just ran into the red-hot Tom's d'Etat over a wet track last time out in the Grade 2 Fayette. And right now, there are not a lot of handicap horses beating Tom's d'Etat, who came right back to win the Clark Handicap. Mr. Freeze, the runner-up of that race, I think was 3rd in the Clark, so that race came back well. And in the Woodward, who knew? Bal Harbour gave a good horse preservationist a fight, although I thought he got the good trip that day.
Yeah, I think that had a lot to do with the big effort 2 back. That race was all about trips, and it felt like you had to be up close, which is where he was. He still ran the race that he ran, Dan. A 105 buyer is going to give him a look in this race. And I actually feel like the cutback to the 1-turn mile probably helps him. I just don't think he's good enough. We'll see what he does in here. I'm not a fan of this horse.
I've always been more of a fan of this horse than you, but even I'll readily admit I never thought he was a Grade 1 kind of horse, and we'll see. He almost pulled it off in the Woodward 2 starts back with that fig. The 3 is Forewarned. Again, we've talked about Uriah St. Louis pulling off these gigantic upsets in major races with horses like Discreet Lover. Maybe this would even be a little bit more shocking with the 3 Forewarned coming in off a state-bred stakes win at Mahoning Valley. Let's go to the Ohio Endurance. He's 7-5. He found the right spot. He got the right ride, and he's just better than these horses as we see him split down towards the inside. 93 buyer speed figure here. My issue is he's been exposed at the Grade 1 level in races like the Woodward and the Whitney. They're taking a shot, and if he gets a setup, maybe he'll come for a piece.
Yeah, these races are just too tough for him, but he's going to be a very big price in this race.
Pat on the Back, the number 4 is a New York bred that's just been handled expertly by Jeremiah Engelhardt. He's a horse you got to manage with kid gloves because he's got bad feet, and you just got to kind of nurse him along, and he'll tell you when he's ready to run. He ran 2 starts back in the Kelso, a grade 2, where he beat a nice miler in Prince Lucky, a nice horse in True Timber who's in this race. We expected a big effort at a short price last time out in the Empire Classic, and it wasn't there. Well, watch the Empire Classic right now. Mr. Buff controlled the lead up front. When Mr. Buff gets that kind of trip, he's tough. I don't mind him getting beat by Mr. Buff, who was the horse he had to beat in this race. I mind him not holding second.
I mean, a little bit I do too. I mean, the horse who ran second, Dynamax Prime, is in really good form. But yeah, he's probably supposed to be second in here. The real idea for me anyway with this race would just be, yes, he's run well at 1 mile and 1/8 before. It's really not his distance. He's a better horse going shorter. He showed that in the Kelso 2-back. Listen, the Kelso wasn't a super strong field, but there were some good horses in there. He stayed close to a pretty solid pace in there. Got a good trip overall, but he really ran that day. He ran a 103, a career top for him. This is his distance. When he's right, this horse is pretty good, and he might be a very good price in this race.
Dropping 8 pounds from the Empire Classic. He was picking up 10 off that win in the Kelso Handicap. Maybe that had something to do with it. I agree with Mike. I think turning back to 1 mile is key for him. He wasn't embarrassed when 5th in this race last year.
Well in
I have the same feeling with him that I do about Bal Harbour. I think he's a nice New York bred, maybe a nice grade 2 type at his best. We'll see if he's a grade 1 horse. We know Maximum Security is a grade 1 horse, and he did it against older horses last time out in the Bull Ruler. And after he won the Haskell, and he whipped Spun to run that day, he was supposed to run in the Pennsylvania Derby. We all know what happened. He got sick. It looked like he wasn't going to run again until at the end of this year. He came back in the Bold Ruler, turning back to 7 furlongs. It was going to be interesting to see how he would handle the turn back and the older horses. He breezed. Let's turn into the stretch of the Bold Ruler Handicap for Maximum Security. He's been on the lead from the start, and you watch Luis Saez, he really is just riding this horse out. Tale of Silence can't get to him. Truce Timber can't get to him. And what I like is the 2 horses that he was battling with early, they're nowhere.
Yeah, he ran well in this race. I mean, I like the ride that he got from the rail, where Saez just sort of went forward with him and allowed him to take the lead. But he had everybody chasing through the turn, would not let them into the race, and he really ran through the wire too. You don't worry about the distance with this horse. I just think he's the horse to beat in here, Dan. I did feel like Spun to Run was going to make him earn it in this race, especially with the form he's been in lately, but this is the horse to beat.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and you made a very good point. He won the race on the turn.
Yeah.
Where he was able to create that separation. That's what good speed horses do. I think in this situation, Spun to Run might be attached to his hip and really turning on the pressure on the turn. And if now they're in a pitched battle, it opens things up for other horses. I said that Spun to Run was no match for Maximum Security in the Haskell. Let's be honest, he's a different horse right now.
Yeah.
His last 2 races have pointed that out, both at 1 mile, both at a 2-turn mile.
Yeah.
The Parks race, I don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
It's legit. He ran a 1:10. He won the race like a workout, and then he runs in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Now, maybe this wasn't the greatest dirt mile field in the world this year. I loved that Irad just took the race to everybody. He made the front. We see him drifting out. He changes leads a little bit late, but I just thought the ride here was superb. Get this horse out on the lead. Get his confidence up. Omaha Beach is a good horse. He's coming up for second. This is yet another big effort. I mean, buyers of 110, 109 in his last 2, and the connections, I'm sure, are thrilled he's outside Maximum Security.
Yeah, I'm sure they are too, but I still feel like they got to be aggressive with this horse again to give him his best chance to win. Listen, at the end of the day, the Breeders' Cup, it came back fast again.
Yeah.
He had all the best of it in there. You're right that Irad, has a lot to do with that because he just put him right on the front in that race. But all in all, he got a very soft trip on the lead in there. Nobody really came after him. You saw him drift into the stretch. That's what he does. He does that in just about all of his races, so you don't really want to worry about it. If he runs one of his last 2, he's probably going to win this race. Those figures are just too fast for this field. I just feel like it might be a little different in here because he is going to have to race Maximum Security in here. And I don't think, Maximum Security to me, you can question him all you want about where he came from and the way that they've handled him and things that have gone wrong for him, but he's a legit horse. And this horse is going to have to race him in here, it feels like.
Nicodemus is the number 7. You're a huge fan of this horse, and he has acquitted himself in the graded ranks at 1 mile. 1-turn mile winner of the Westchester. I think he has excuses for his last 2 races. They ran him in the True North 2 starts back. It was one of those days where you wanted to be inside. He was inside in the early portion of the race, ended up in the 2 path and eased out even further in the stretch. But for me, there just wasn't a lot of pace in that race going on, and I think that worked against him against a good horse in Catalina Cruiser. And last time out in the neighborhood, we talk about lack of pace. There was no speed whatsoever, and Promises Fulfilled was able to go 46, even in the form Promises Fulfilled is in now, and that's a form.
Yeah.
He was just too much for that. Nicodemus has been away a long time. This is a fascinating spot that Linda Rice is bringing Nicodemus back into. He does have the triple-digit buyer. I think they would do the rain dance and hope it rains because he likes that. You think this horse could maybe get out there at a piece? He's 20-1 on the morning line.
Yeah, I mean, there are, if nothing else, there are things to like about him. I feel like coming back off of this kind of layoff in a Grade 1 Cigar Mile, it just might be asking too much of him, because at the end of the day, you don't really know if he's this kind of a horse. I just like him. It's interesting that you bring up the wet track thing, because I feel like one of the reasons that I like him is both of his wins since he's gotten to New York have been in the slop. I don't really feel like he likes a wet track that much.
Really?
I think he's a better horse on fast dirt. So I'm hoping that he gets it in here, and he's obviously going to need some hitting in front. But this is his best distance. His true north to me, two-back, is a very underrated performance. I think he ran a lot better than it looks in there. The mile is going to be even better for him. If he can get some hitting up front, I think he'll run at the end and can get maybe a piece of this race.
And he's going to be a price a lot of folks are going to see. Vandoff, layoff,
I think that was for
20-1. It was for heat exhaustion. A very hot day on July the 6th at Belmont. We'll see what we get from Nicodemus. He's going to be running late. Network Effect was a good 2-year-old last year, I thought. I liked him more than you did. He was second in the Nashua, second in the Remsen. Listen, for a 2-year-old to run 93, 94 buyers, he's okay, and then he disappeared. And we didn't see him for almost a year, and he came back for Chad, and now there's a one other then. And let's watch Network Effects win right now. He is on the outside. I thought all in all, he got a pretty good trip. He was wide on the backstretch. He lost a little bit of ground. And I guess considering off the layoff, that's okay. But he's going to make the front. I think he's going to get a little bit tired in the last 16th of a mile, which I think he had license to do again off the layoff. Chad could have found 100 easier spots than this. He's showing a lot of confidence in this horse.
I agree. You know, and he did some good things in this race, considering how long he was away. I mean, it's such a late start to his 3-year-old campaign. They just kept him wide but up close, which was where you had to be on that day at Aqueduct, and he did what he had to do. Yeah, he went to his wrong lead at the end. I'm not going to be hard on him for that. He was a good 2-year-old. I didn't like him as much as some other people did as a 2-year-old, but his form is hard to knock. I mean, he ran well in all 3 of his starts, and you know, you just sort of feel like if he can carry that form forward as a 3-year-old, he's just supposed to keep getting better.
The 9 is Looking at Bikinis, and the situation with Looking at Bikinis is he's a one-turn horse. And I think a lot of folks might dispute that and say, well, in the Curlin, he was on a dead rail on a muddy track, and the Travers, are you really going to fault him in his 4th lifetime start going 1.25 miles? I just think he's better going one turn. We saw that last time out at Keeneland. First race off the Travers debacle, and he wins very, very nicely in here. Knicks go okay. He's a Grade 1 winner at Keeneland. He hasn't won since the Breeders' Futurity as a 2-year-old. Looking at Bikinis, just ran right by him here, and he's going strongly into the wire. 97 buyer, really nothing to sneeze at considering he's such a lightly raced 3-year-old. And again, Chad is showing a lot of confidence here, taking a shot with this horse. 15-1 on the morning line. He's got talent.
He does. I like this horse, and that was a fine win for him. I mean, it wasn't a great field, but he did what he had to do in there, and he won easy, and he got a figure for it as well. Of the 2 Chad 3-year-olds, and I don't love either of them, I prefer this one.
Tale of Silence is a grade stakes winner at a mile. He won the Westchester in 2018 with just a perfect trip, just sitting off a 3-ply pace duel and shooting back up the rail and upper stretch to win that race. He ran second in the Bull Ruler last time out. Junior gave him a great ride. He said, listen, probably not going to win this one. Let's sit back. Let's clunk up for a piece. It worked out perfectly. When you see Tale of Silence earn a 103 buyer speed figure, and it was his career best by a long way in his 21st lifetime start, does that make you question the maximum security buyer a little bit? I
didn't question it because it felt like it came back a fast race, and I'm not going to question the figure. This horse, to me, the ride had everything to do with it in that race. As you say, Junior just sat it out and rode the rail, and was along for second at the end of the day. He's the kind of horse who I'd happily use somewhere underneath, and I would not use on top.
True Timber was well beaten in the 2018 Bull Ruler. He parlayed that into a runner-up effort in the Cigar Mile at 31-1. He was wide most of the way in that race. There wasn't a lot of pace on. He ran well, and they just put him in some ridiculous spots. They put him in the Pegasus. They put him in the Godolphin Mile. You could make the argument that True Timber now, with 2 starts under his belt, is cycling back to his best for a very good trainer in Kieran McLaughlin. His first start back at the Kelso against Pat on the Back, he worked hard in the early portion of that race, and he tired. Last time out in the Bull Ruler, he tried maximum security, just wasn't good enough. That's the thing that worries me, because maybe he'll improve 3rd start back. I wonder if Maximum Security exposed him a little bit. I wonder also, they give him a more patient ride this time.
Yeah, I wonder too. It was sort of surprising to see them actually take the race to Maximum Security last time. It didn't work out for them, but they did it. And it wound up maybe costing him at the end. He was just no match. I'm a fan of this horse, Dan. He's just kind of lost me a little bit. I do think he's got a chance to hit the board in this race. He's another horse. I'm not going to use him on top, but I could see him getting a piece of this.
Last Grade 1 of the year and last Grade 1 for several months in New York. It's the prestigious $750,000 Cigar Mile Handicap. We take a look at our top picks in here. I think Maximum Security is going to get to the front. I think he's going to meet the challenge of Spun to Run. He's the 1 3-year-old I kind of like. I like Spun to Run a lot too, but I think of the horses that were on the trail, that ran in the Derby, a lot of them have underperformed. Not this one. I think Maximum Security is the goods. I went 5, 6, 1, and 10. Unfortunately, I chalked out. At least you get value from Mike. You like Nicodemus.
I don't disagree with your assessment of Maximum Security. I actually feel like he's turning out to be a really nice horse. I do think he's the horse to beat in here. Again, the more I looked at the race, I felt like the 5 and the 6 were just sort of destined to hook up here. Maybe it works against them, and Nicodemus can come running late. I'm going to use him on top and then play him underneath.
Big price on Nicodemus. Mike's top pick, 7564, 56110 for me. Grade 1 Cigar Mile, your DRF race of the day for Saturday. Get those free formulator past performances on the race of the day event page at DRF.com. Approximate post time for the Cigar Mile is 4:16 Eastern. Good luck.